Good morning, afternoon, or good evening, folks. I'm your host and guide, Chris Roberts. I'm going to take you on a tour of the underground to help you prepare for what's really out there. Whether you're on the front lines battling the latest threats or leading the overall defensive strategy within your organization, my focus is to help you uncover the best ways, means, and methods to effectively and efficiently use actual threat intelligence within your company, providing you with more insights and practical ways to identify threats and reduce risks before they become incidents. Ready to dive in? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're listening in from. Welcome to another episode of the Dr. Dark Web. And we got some fun stuff going on today. Number one, the background here has obviously changed. I'm now in the dictator chair, dictator of world for life chair, as I like to call this one. It's frippin' awesome. So almost all the future podcasts are going to probably end up coming from here. I've shifted things around, so some fun on that one. I've got two wolf mutts probably wandering in and out of shot as per normal. And I am, as always, wonderfully joined by Danny and her amazing organization, sorting out and planning skills to bring this together, and a very, very dear friend, John Gates. So welcome to both of you. Say hi, please, feel free.
Hello, and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Totally. For everybody that's paying attention to how we've sectioned these all up, this is going to be like the CISO-ish kind of conversation stuff. So one of those kind of leadership, have conversations, see what we're doing, and see what we're conversation. So, John, feel free to introduce yourself, where you are, what you're up to, and all that kind of good craziness.
Yeah, my name is John, as we stated. I work for a Fortune 500 manufacturing company, and I deal with incident and threat response on a day-to-day basis. Global company in nature, so yeah, I got a lot of time for free time and activities.
Yeah.
Joking,
as have we all at the moment. I mean, it's great. We did another recording a couple of nights ago with one of the amazing analysts, Liana, who's one of the analysts at CyberSecurity, and she puts out like this daily report. And I mean, the report's crazy, and the fact that they're doing on a daily basis just blows my mind. But it was like, and here's what's going on. And I'm sitting there and I was thinking about the conversation you and I are going to have. I'm like, we're getting this stuff on a daily basis. It's like, how do we decide what to act upon, what to go, let's hope for the best, and on what's like, okay, this isn't the long-term plan. I'm interested in your thoughts on that, because I mean, you're seeing this stuff on an hour-by-hour, minute-by-minute, day-by-day basis.
Yeah, the main thing that I want to say to start, and I don't know if this will be a popular statement or not, but I think that companies a lot of times in their programs get this whole thing wrong, where threat intelligence actually strengthens, or how it can be used to strengthen. I think that a lot of times we do like whack-a-mole, and we use threat intelligence to look for a single actor, right? Or a single thing that goes on. And we already have in our architecture companies that are doing the IOCs. We have our Palo Altos, our checkpoints, that are doing these things. Our architecture should already be predicting and detecting these things. So where threat intelligence, in my mind, is what drives that is to identify what threat actors are doing it from a holistic but behavioral approach. What are the behaviors that we're seeing? Then in our own environment, where are we seeing that? And if we are seeing that, we need to identify that and improve the security. Architecture should be changing and evolving based on that intelligence if we're using it correctly.
Yeah, I love that. Danny and I talked about this ages ago, and I'd liken it to, we don't have a perimeter, but if we end up like building that brick wall around our moats and our turrets and everything else, for the most part, we tend to wait for something to come over the wall. I liken the whole concept of the threat intel with like sticking a head above the parapet and going, okay, what's coming at us? And is it just the trebuchets? Is somebody chucking exocets at us? All this kind of stuff. That's how I look at it. It's very much that. I don't want to know the onesie twosies. I want to know strategically, where's the market shifting? How are the tactics evolving? We had a great conversation again the other night with Imhotep. For crying out loud, this bug has been cricking around for a couple of years now. We thought we'd literally nailed it back into its freaking coffin, and the ruddy thing's back up again. And you're like, and it's up with more vigor. And so now there's an entire architectural shift. To me, that's way more information and way more useful than just sending me a bunch of bloody IP addresses and going, this is bad and this is bad. To your point, I got a bunch of other gear sitting in the room with all sorts of blinky lights that should be doing most of that for me if I've done it properly.
Right. I mean, you should have your C2 detection and lateral movement detection should already be in place. But again, from a behavioral analytical on the threat intel that comes in, it can help you build on that and find the gaps, right? You find the gaps where the current controls you have in place aren't working. That's what I think a lot of times gets missed in how beneficial threat intelligence can be to a company. But you have to understand your assets, what's in place, what's living in the cloud. And a lot of times companies come at this and they think a solutions provider is going to have all the answers. You got a lot of legwork to do. You need to have the right people together, groups, and tons of conversation before any vendors even considered on what you're doing. You have to adopt a framework for threat modeling. You have to decide if you're going to be asset focused, threat focused, service focused, or any combination of that. Depending, every business runs differently, and I think a lot of times a business will put too much on the actual service provider to provide answers that they need to come to the table with. I think so.
So now you hit on something which I want to touch on as well. You're a global organization. You're
Mm-hmm.
not just, I'm going to make an assumption, tell me if I'm right on it, you're not just going to run one standard threat model, because you've got stuff in manufacturing, which runs a different type of model. You've got the human aspect globally, which runs a different type of model. You've got all sorts of things in different countries. So, I mean, you hit on it. There's different ways of looking at it. I think even inside an organization, how did you decide? I mean, you've obviously had to interact with the business everywhere, but I'm interested on I know when you walked in there was a lot to be done, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just sitting, listening, and looking at how things ran, and just yeah, it took a long time just to kind of get my feet on the ground and running because I came from a different background and got into this. I'm not new to security because I always think about this. And back in 1999, I cared
Right.
about security before it was like a mainstream cool thing, but I digress. It took me a while just to get used to how big business runs as opposed to, our public sector, totally different. But once I did that, you do small things, right? And then build upon that. We're not done. We'll never be done. The landscape changes too drastically to say you'll ever be done. But I feel like you just have to do small building blocks in a big company because things move slowly. And if you try to push too much at once, it ends up taking much longer to get to your goal.
Got it. Now, here's an interesting part on this one. I'm running into this where I'm at now, which is how much did you get ahead of it by raising people's awareness and level of understanding? I'm assuming you didn't just go straight and said, hey, we're going to do this. It was, how do I help people understand? How did that work out for
It did, and definitely the the awareness portion in working with governance, risk, and compliance. Right, that was a big piece of this. With anything that you're going to try to implement, they are definitely involved with every step of that. So that played a key role in reaching out and setting up, the groups to contact and dealing with the different cultural language type things too. I mean, it takes time. It takes time to get a message. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually a really good point. Because, I mean, again, same thing from a global organization. It's not a US centric approach. It's how do I deal with it here versus Europe versus Middle East versus APAC and everywhere else.
Yep. How are we
Yeah.
following the sun, right? And how are we delivering a consistent message that's received and understood? Yep.
Yeah, that makes a good sense. I think you hit it. I mean, you hit another really good point, which is it's not a security, I wouldn't say fight. It's not a security fight. It is us having those conversations. And again, same thing where I'm hanging out at the moment. It's great. The compliance, Kate on compliance is absolutely freaking amazing. Working with Charles, working with the finance folk and everybody else. they're willing to listen, which is really, really freaking nice. So it's like you've got their ear. You almost want to treat it somewhat sympathetically because you want to respect the fact that they came to the table wanting to listen.
Right. But that's a key point too, because another thing before engaging a company, right, and knowing what to do with threat intelligence, well, you need to make those connections and understand what the business's appetite is, right? What the risk appetite is, because that's going to
Yeah.
help you prioritize what type of intel you're going to process versus what might get pushed to the side. Not that it's not important, but maybe your business focus and you're going to focus on specific risks that are higher on the scale to your business. It's a huge factor in deciding how to approach what you're going to test when. You know,
Yeah, ironically, it's probably, I mean, same similar boat here where we're at. I mean, there's an argument inside the organization to say what we are building has more importance than pretty much anything else inside the organization. The intellectual property that's been put together, the fact we got considerations as to what has to stay in the US and what can't leave the US, what they call ITAR compliance for the audience more than anything else, and various other factors. I mean, it's really interesting because, again, it's not a corporate focus, it's manufacturing focus in other areas, which is, it's really nice to be able to sit down and have those conversations.
right, but that brings into with manufacturing supply chain, of course, and the risks that are
Yeah.
associated there, right? I mean, that's a
Yeah.
big deal. If you can't get the materials that are necessary to do your builds, that risk is much greater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially, I mean, I always stood up on stage. I remember over the years, I've had some fun with aviation and various other things of transportation nature. And I've always said, yeah, yeah,
I've heard
it's,
that.
it's it's on the internet somewhere. It's always been one of those where it's like, it's not one company building this darn thing. You know, it's like 100 or 1,000 companies coming together with their own piece of the Lego that they bolt in to make this bloody thing work. And now I'm living that. I don't know if I call it dream or nightmare or a little bit of a hybrid at the moment. So let's talk a little bit about. So, I mean, you've obviously got a lot of the threat intel side of the world going on as well with you. How are you? Talk a little bit about prioritization. Talk a little bit about the communication standpoint. When you are looking
Mhm.
at the types of data that you want to have presented to you, how are you determining? What are you doing? Because I mean, are you still using the traditional, "Hey, I need IPs and ranges," or are you looking at it, to use that a more holistic side? I'm interested in how you're evaluating.
We do a blend on that. Obviously, IOCs are important to make sure that your current controls that are in place are catching the things, but more the behaviors. I'm more interested in how the criminal organization's operating once they get in. What type of things are they doing to move laterally in a network that might be bypassing current security controls, antivirus in place? Things like that are are the things that we try to focus on more. And as we find gaps, obviously adapt the architecture to support it, but more so the behavioral things are key to see if something's happening that maybe got through the perimeter that we weren't aware of and to detect it. I mean, at the
Got it.
most basic sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then what about from a business standpoint? I'm interested because I mean, it's like anything. Where you are now is not where the business is going to be, 6, 12, 18, 24 months time. How much are you working with the business to understand business drivers, business models? What's the business, mergers and acquisitions, and then building threat intel into that side of the world as well?
That's a daily, ever evolving conversation that goes on. In larger companies, mergers and
Right.
acquisitions happen all the time, right? Constantly buying into new. So that happens. We do have a roadmap, and our architecture and engineering team, um, yeah, they've got a good handle
Nice.
on that, and the communication is good with us from that standpoint. So we at least have those conversations as they evolve. We're talking about some of the what risk could be introduced as we onboard, this company.
Got it. That makes sense. I like that. That's definitely. And then I guess the other part of it is as well is how much are you looking at the human aspect of things? So I know we talked about supply chain. but to some degree, I've used it a number of times on like the internal population. How do we effectively ensure, as we work through a DevSecOps type of scenario, how do we make sure that any of those teams are not posting stuff where they shouldn't be posting it? Are you doing any sort of focus on that as well?
Yeah, we have an information security awareness program that
Right.
runs throughout the year. It's not like a, once, twice, or three times a year. It's a
Thank
continual
you.
program.
Long may
Yes.
long may that continue.
Yeah, it needs to, and constantly we're constantly drilling home about social media, warnings there and posting things, but being cautious about like putting badges. I see people all the time on LinkedIn where they post a photo of their badge. It's like, oh dear Lord. So
Yeah, look at me. I've got my new ID badge. I'm like, thank
it's
you
like,
very much. And so have I got it.
right. And if I'd like to enter, I can probably draft something up that looks something like it. So yeah, we do have a very, very good program that
Nice.
does that. I'd say almost monthly, brings some, you know, awareness portion in communications.
That's cool. That's nice. Speaking of that side of things, I put a LinkedIn post out a couple of days ago, and it talked about leadership. It was it's part of it's because of an internal set of conversations we're having, but part of it's also because of obviously how the war over in Ukrainian-Russian war has affected intelligence and attack vectors as well. We've noticed a huge increase on attacks against our leadership, our senior leaders inside the organization. And like a lot of other companies, we have a page that's about us and it's got all the people and it's got their names, it's got their titles, and it's got their LinkedIn and everything else. And you're like, I get it and we need it. But at the same time, you're handing this to the adversaries and the criminal element on a silver platter. So we're now starting to we're adding more intelligence and background checking into that, and then also feeding in some more awareness. How's everything on your side? Do you end up doing the similar kind of things as well?
Yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
key person checks too, right? Yeah, we definitely we have that part covered as well, and not just the key people, right? Because the CEO secretary likely has the same access to things
Yeah.
as the CEO would, right? So it encompasses the entire groups of people that are involved. Because yeah, it's not just those key people, but the people that work directly around them pose just as much of a threat, right? They're just as much of yeah. It's keeps you up at night. It can.
Yeah. Oh, big time. Yeah. It's one of those things where, yeah, we get every now and again, somebody will send me an email. I'll get the email purporting to come from our CEO going, I need this immediately. And I'm like, and you can get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know if it was our CEO, you wouldn't be sending me an email coming from a Gmail account or something like that. It ain't going to happen, little buddies.
And forcing you to
But
act quickly.
yeah.
There's a time limit. There's a constraint. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. All of those things. It's a little crazy. We have more work to do on that side. I think like most organizations that are out there.
Yeah, that'll be a continual thing no matter what. Because again, just like the threat intel, the social engineering things evolve and change as well.
Yeah,
So
oh, absolutely. I mean, the
just it's
tactics, it was just always fun working with Gabrielle over at Wiser as well, was because it was really nice because he was really good at bringing people in from like a tactics side of world. So we talk about what's going on, then he'd find people out there that have experienced those tactics. And I mean, he's put some amazing videos up there. And again, a lot of that was driven from the threat intel side of the world. Like, hey, we're seeing this. Now let's get some real world examples. Now let's put them up on a screen and then we can use that to make everybody else aware. It's just a really nice way of doing it.
Yeah, what he does with the animations and stuff to engage the audience, that's key with that type of delivery, what he does too,
Yeah,
because you don't get bored and
yeah,
fall asleep.
yeah. It's
Yep.
really, really fun stuff. And again, it's what I love about it. It's just short, sweet stuff. It's like, a minute, 2 minute, 3 minutes, and you've kind of got your dose. That's your dose for the week or for the day or whatever. And I kind of like it. It's a good way. And again, the nice thing about it is you can choose it. If you know what's going on the Intel stuff, if you know more focus on third parties or suppliers or the financials or the time of the year, you can kind of tweak some of these very, very effectively.
Yeah, and I think it's more the awareness part too, especially in a bigger company, is everybody has to understand that everybody's a target, right? That works in your
Yeah.
company. And sometimes people think, well, what are people going to want with my sign on? I don't even have access to this or that. Every single person, and that's the driver, and that's the hope with awareness, is to reach everyone so that they truly understand that. But I think it's going to take a bit. It's going to take a bit to get that message delivered
Yeah.
consistently in any business at all.
Oh yeah, and there's always, this is one of those things. It's been a really nice. I was in on a board meeting the other day, and it was interesting because I'm like, shit's gonna happen. I mean, I said it very nicely, but the short version is shit's gonna happen. We can't stop it. We can throw as much money at this as we're throwing at building planes, and we can't stop it. What we can do though is understand it, learn, make sure that we're as up to date as we can be through threat intelligence and that kind of stuff. And then ensure that when something happens, we know what we're doing about it. We drill for it. We've got the controls in place. We've got the instant response, and the people know not to run around like headless chickens.
Exactly. And who contacts the media?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially New York. I mean, you folks are a little bit bigger than we are at the moment. We're getting that. We're getting there. But
You
yeah,
will. You guys have a good product. It's gonna take off. No pun intended.
so much fun. There was a report, scrolling for a second, there was a report the other day that one of the big private jet companies, small jet companies, that just, they've just done a speed test, and, they just exceeded like Mach 1 or something like that. I don't know what altitude they were doing it at. They were like, well, that's kind of cute. I mean, we'll get 1.7 on a regular jog, but, we'll push past 2 if we have to. It's freaking hilarious. So, but yeah, with that comes big targets on our backs. So I'm
Yeah, that's
interested.
cool.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. That's a whole
Yep.
set of
And
conversations.
everybody's
We
credentials are worth
thankfully,
something.
Charles and the team have done an amazing, like a seriously freaking amazing job of again managing that risk. Because again, we came in and it's like, okay, what's going on? What are we seeing? Let's take the threat intel. Let's take the reports. Right, we're seeing a series of attacks and a series of people looking for credentials. How do we effectively mitigate that? How do we manage that? How do we deal with it? So, to their credit, they've done a fantastic job of really putting some cool stuff in place. So yeah, all credit to them. But it's nice because again, that threat intel is now driving the roadmap, is driving how do we communicate, who do we, and what are we doing. So it's actually really nice to see it work properly.
Right. And help it when it matures your architecture. That's the other key piece. How does
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
identify gaps? How do you fix your architecture or align it to evolve as
Yeah,
attacker techniques are evolving? Yep.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, the other question for you, let's talk about communication, because obviously you can't work in a vacuum. I mean, it doesn't work in our industry anymore. It hasn't, and it shouldn't, but it doesn't. You talked about working with like the governance, risk, and compliance folks. What about with leadership, like talking to leaders and dealing with the C-suite, dealing with the board and stuff like that? How have you found those communications? How effective, and what have you used? What kind of tactics and stuff?
Yeah. In my role, my boss generally does most of that kind
Got it.
of
Yeah,
communication, but there are open lines there. They have weekly, and they have very frequent
yeah,
meetings, and that goes very well.
nice, good.
It needs to, right? Because without that partnership, you're not going to get
Yeah,
funding, right? That's the key in establishing the business's need and why we're doing it. So yeah, that's good. I just don't have any personal experience on directly communicating with them. So
got it. Yeah, that's where I'm getting brought into the various conversations, which is nice. Boiling it down into some, I mean, it's probably the same stuff you do for the boss. It's boiling it down so it's succinct, so the points are there, so we're not running around like this and everything else, and it's just very, very well defined.
right, because I think you have what 3 to 5 minutes when you're in a meeting like that to either
Yep.
get your point across or it's lost.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and that's it. Yeah, and I think that's, again, it's one of those things. It's almost a skill, and again, giving the cybersecurity skill folks some credit on this one, the ability to actually distill the reports and distill that data into a very, very succinct message. I mean, again, look, Ilana and some of the other folks that are out there, it's really nice to see that. And then even when you've seen the Intel stuff come in, I get a very, very succinct, like, hey, this is what you need to consider. I mean, I can cheat in some ways. I can literally take that, copy and paste it into the exec report and go, and we're done. Oh, no.
Danny's all right with that, right?
Yeah, but it's so nice to be able to do that. I mean, it really, really is. It's, you don't have to dig through pages and pages and scroll through tons and tons of stuff. It's so freaking useful.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you're contextualizing it before you deliver it, which is great. That helps, because that's where a lot of the work is, right? You're taking intel from 90,000 places. You need a single source of truth to really work out of. So anything that a vendor can do to help with that aggregation and definitely putting it into context is priceless. Yep, priceless.
Yeah, it's really nice. I love the timeline stuff as well. There's a really nice feature when you're doing searches and stuff like that it shows timelines. It was actually really, really cool. I was doing an internal report and we were looking at where threats are and how they've changed. And you can tell, every time the news announces something or what's going on, you can, and then you start seeing it go up and it's like, okay, back to your point. What are the trends? What's happening? What are we seeing? And the ability to just go, hey, over the last 3 to 5 years, this is what we've seen and here's where the trending is going and here's why. It's makes that discussion as to why we have to deal with this so much freaking easier.
And saves lots of time. Imagine how much time it would take just to parse all that stuff out.
No. Been there, done that. Don't want to do it again. Yeah. Have had to build those engines. Don't like that. Not happening again.
Come on, you like Yara.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that just brings back some scary moments of coding and freaking nesting expressions. Yet no, let somebody else deal with that.
Yeah, I built credit card processing systems, buddy. That's what I did for the school. Yeah, I built processing systems. So no wonder how I got into security around that.
Yeah, big time. Good grief.
So yeah, I'm saying I don't like minimal coding for me. I know how to do it, but I'm with you. I've done my share.
Well, I think that's it. I mean, again, you go back to, you look at the vendors. I mean, this to me is one of those critical things. We were talking about orchestration technologies and it's like, okay, there's some really nice ones out there, but there's not enough of us on this side of the fence. There's not enough people on the blue and purple team. So it's like, how do I most effectively use the time that I have to get to where I need to? And it's not sitting down coding a new program. It's sitting down going, what do you have that's already built that I can use effectively? Does it get me 8/10, 9/10 of the way there? So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what else we got? What else do you want to go through? I think we've covered a whole bunch of stuff. This has been fun so far. What else you got on that list of yours?
It's been a great call.
Yeah, what else you got? Danny, what else we got? I think we've run through a bunch of this. I'm trying to think what else we have. And we covered a ton of stuff. We went through the communication. We went through collaboration. We went through the findings. It's been nice. It's been nice. Although, you know what? Long weekend. What are you up to? What do you got? You got 3 days. Well, kind of 3 days. What are you up to? You getting a break or are you head down?
I think you know the answer to that. Holidays mean exactly what to us?
Yeah, another day of the week. Nice to see it, but by now,
there's a little working.
Yeah,
I'll find some time. Relax with the family. Throw the frisbee around with the dogs.
Yep.
We'll get it done. But yeah, there'll be some work involved.
Oh yeah,
how about
totally.
You?
Same thing. Some work involved. Just keeping an eye on things, running various things. We're doing some pretty cool stuff with the engines today. They're having fun down at the airport. I really want to go out there. One of these days, I'm going to walk out there with like a loaf of bread and a toasting fork. And I'm going to see see how close I can get before somebody tasers me.
couple hangers out there with some test engines, huh?
Yeah, that'll be the one. Yeah. Yeah, totally fun. So no, it's good. And again, the interesting thing about that stuff is we're doing this. So what I'm doing behind the scenes is I'm running a whole bunch of the intel to go, who's talking about it, who's saying anything about it, what are our vendors, what are our suppliers, who internally is discussing stuff. Just, again, these events, as they come up, as we do these milestones and as these things happen, as we go to Mojave and as everything goes, the nice thing about it is we can model the freaking intel to just follow the organization. And that way we tend to get ahead of the risk, which is really freaking nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you get away with bringing bread in, you should try to bring in graham crackers and some chocolate. Get some marshmallows in there, make some s'mores, you know? Now we're talking.
Oh, that has to happen. Oh, I'm going to have to find that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get one of those s'mores. We've scored them, I don't care. I'm going to get one of those s'mores. You can buy the little squishy things that hold it all together. I'm going to put that on the end of about a 30-foot pole and just walk out to the plane and see how close I can get to it. That'd be freaking awesome. Yeah.
S'mores do go well with whiskey.
They do. They do. Yeah, they do. Although I can't those things. We scrolled a bit, but I think somewhere I remember seeing there's like